Anyways, thank you. Welcome, and let's get started. All right, guys. Thanks.
Hey, I don't know if somebody did join in. I was putting on record. I had to click recording on the side of the Blab. Thanks for joining us on Periscope and Blab. If you're on Blab, you can jump on there as well. And we're finally having our live show discussing helping parents with children with various diagnoses and really self-care for the parent as well, because a lot of focus is always on our children, right? We put so much energy into it. And so I'm so honored to have a guest host, Kendra Garcia. She's an occupational therapist and a Amazon best-selling author. And so we just really want to give some tools, some keys, some interventions that can really help parents take care of themselves mentally, emotionally, and in all areas, right? We need to take care of ourselves because we're no good for nobody else. We're not good for our spouses, our children, or even ourselves. So I thought it was a much needed show that can really target parents. And parents, you may know somebody else who have children who have different, and this is also good for those who are caretakers of their parents. But we're really focusing on those who take care of children because it takes so much out of you, right, Kendra? It takes a lot of energy.
Exactly.
You have to really give yourself
a full-time job. It literally is a full-time job.
It's a full-time, right.
Cheryl, I also wanted to add, who goes even more unnoticed than parents in general are fathers, because
right, that's right.
Of course, the children are at the forefront, but then after that, they're the mothers. But the fathers are often the ones that people tend to forget about. So in my book, I really like to focus on fathers because oftentimes you don't really hear about fathers as far as the things that they go through, because they do. They do.
Excellent, exactly.
And a lot of marriages suffer because of the situation, and that's also something that's in the book as well.
Right. Yeah, and that's why I specifically had parents down, because we always talk about mothers and mommy, because mommy's always a nurturer and mommy's always can you hear me good? Can you hear me good?
I hear you perfectly. You guys hear me?
Tell me if it's loud. Yeah, I hear you. Tell me if it's louder with the headset. Is this better? Or it's the same?
It's the same.
It's the same. Okay, I'll take it off. Okay, because last time it didn't work well. But yes, we just definitely need to discuss how fathers and mothers and how you can help both of the parents as well. And it's true, Kendra, a lot of times daddy's kind of left out of the picture. And then a lot of times men, this is a whole nother broadcast, but sometimes even in other situations, it's easier for men sometimes. Sometimes men feel left out, and when they feel like they can't help in any kind of way, sometimes they leave the situation, not because they don't care. A lot of times that's misunderstood, that he left, he don't care. No, maybe he didn't know how to cope with the situation, so he got scared and backed out of this. And that even when you don't have kids, most of the time it is with kids. Kids, when the father feel like he can't take care of the kids financially, nurturally, he just feel like I need to just go. And so, they need support as well.
And
mothers and fathers need support.
Also, Cheryl, one of the things that I've noticed too when it comes to fathers and mothers is sometimes we as moms and wives, we're guilty of feeling that the dad should grieve or respond the same way they do. And when they don't respond in the way that we feel they should, we think they don't care.
Right.
We think that we're in this alone. But they have to realize everybody is going to grieve differently, and we have to respect everybody's process. Because you have to realize too, let's say, for example, if it's a boy that's diagnosed with autism or a disability, that's their
right.
And if it's their own son or their namesake, they are, grieving that in itself. The fact that, all these plans that they have for their children, we have plans as mothers, but fathers have their own plans.
That's right.
Passing the ball, having the guy talk, putting their son in little league or sports. And when we're hit with diagnosis, it's like their world, is shattered, just like it is ours. But we think that
that's right.
We're sad, they should look sad. Sometimes men drown themselves in their work. Sometimes they may look or appear to be withdrawn, but they're not. It's just that they are grieving in their own way, and we have to respect their grieving process.
That's right.
Unfortunately, I don't hear that. I felt that at the time my husband should have responded the way I did. He was in denial. He felt, there's nothing wrong. He's okay. He's fine. And I was upset.
Yeah, denial.
What the doctor said. And, unfortunately, our marriage, didn't last, but I hope that, that I can encourage other wives and other mothers to
That's right.
not, to basically just understand and just respect them where they are and allow them to breathe and don't diminish or belittle their grieving process, because it's no more, it's just as significant as our grieving process.
That's right. That's a good point. I'm glad you brought that. That's the reason why I wanted you to come in, because I wanted you to give a perspective from a mother who has children who are diagnosed with, what did you say? They both have autism?
No, my youngest, I have 3 children. My youngest son is 12. He was diagnosed at the age of 3. Then I have a daughter who's my youngest. She was with ADHD and also other health impairments. So
So clearly you can. Oh, your sound went out a little bit. Let me hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, now you're back in. That's the reason why I wanted you to come, because you can identify with what parents go through emotionally, psychologically. Even with moments I want to discuss sometime when you're out in public, and I've seen this happen with friends of mine or people that I counsel with, and they feel embarrassed because a lot of times when their children are acting out and misbehaving or what's perceived as misbehaving, a lot of times we're not aware or sensitive to that child may have maybe a problem, and automatically, we want to judge the parent or that mother don't know how to take care of that child and get that child in control, and we become so judgmental. And I'm sure a lot of us been guilty of that. But now that we're working with those children, or we are experiencing that, we're more sensitive to that. And a lot of times the parents feel embarrassed because you worry about what people think about you, what people are thinking about your child. Then you dealing with what your own stresses about it, and now you're like, what to do? Or maybe parents feel like, I don't want to take the child out because I had a parent say this, it's too much. Every time I take the child out, they take me through so much, and they just decide just to stay home altogether. So I'm sure you can identify with those feelings and emotions.
Oh, definitely, because it's like you always get the proverbial stare, like, oh, those young mothers, or it's just like they stare. Your child, unfortunately, may have a meltdown, and it's
right.
And at the time, I had 3 children, all under the age of 4. So having one child having a meltdown, and I'm stressed, and unfortunately, when you're stressed, they feel it, and it actually they become even more stressed. So I'm trying to get them to calm down and be quiet, as people are and shaking their head and just talking amongst themselves. And it's like, but you know what it did? It taught me tolerance. So when I started to see kids behave, I never assumed, oh, they're bad or their parents have no control. I always said, you know what? There could be something greater going on that I don't see, because unfortunately, things like autism and ADHD, those are the, disguised, disabilities. You can't look at them and tell, oh, that person is on the spectrum, or that child has ADHD. You can't tell those things just by simply looking at them. So,
absolutely.
Wheelchair. Unfortunately, if the child is in a wheelchair, people are more understanding and more compassionate. But because they
it's visible, they can see.
So they automatically assume that child is bad. The mother has no control. She, needs parenting classes or what have you. But they really just don't understand. It's a very.
They don't understand.
You had mentioned earlier about just the different things that parents go through. I mean, you go through things spiritually. I mean, I went through spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, in every way. I mean, there was a period of time I was angry at God. I felt that, how you believe God for something, or you want something so bad, and when you finally get it, in your eyes, it's broken, and it's like you feel unloved. It's like, God, when I dreamed of having children, I dreamed of having these perfect, children, by whose standards though, and it's
Cheryl, I'm gonna let you in a few minutes. We're just trying to get some things out first, but hold on, we'll let you in a minute. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kendra. Yes.
And it's like, I even started to experience things physically in my body. I began to have pain that I could not explain. I was in so much pain physically that I would go to the doctors and have all kind of CAT scans and MRIs and all kinds of tests and only for them to tell me, Ms. Garcia, there's nothing wrong with you. We can't find the source of the problem. And it was just like, I believe, stress. And I'll never forget, I was sitting in the neurologist's office trying to, of course, get ready to take another test. And she comes into the room, and all she said to me was, "Hi, Mrs. Garcia, how are you?" And the next thing I knew, Cheryl, I burst into tears. I mean, I began to sob uncontrollably. I mean, all I said to her was, I'm tired. I'm just so tired. Because I had filled so many things in, and that because that year I got the diagnosis, my grandfather died, my divorce, my marriage collapsed. So I had a lot of things going on here. That's a lot. I just kept it pinned up. And then when she came in, you know, just innocently asking me how I was, I just couldn't. It's like I just buckled under the pressure of just everything that I had holding in. And at that time, I had all 3 children in therapy for different things. So it was just very, very hard. I mean, but you know, there is life beyond the diagnosis.
There's life beyond diagnosis, amen. And that's what we need to support. And I forgot to introduce myself as well. My name is Cheryl Howard. I'm an inspirational and empowerment specialist. By day, I do intensive in-home therapy with children and families, and I do mental health support counseling with adults who are diagnosed with psychiatric diagnosis as well. Anything from schizophrenia, schizoaffective, and depression, and ADHD as well. And one of the reasons why I wanted to invite Kendra on is because, and I'm sure she does the same thing, part of my job is to collaborate and have collateral services with other mental health professionals, because at the end of the day, you know, we're helping the child and we're also helping the parents as well. And we collaborate with one another. You know, sometimes I'll consult an occupational therapist, or they'll consult like, we just try to figure out what are we both using? What kind of interventions are we using to help the child and the parent, and kind of work together to be on one accord, because so we can have the same goal, and then, you know, we can see the child reach certain milestones. But also, my passion goes out to mom, you know, because I deal with moms who are depressed because they have a lot of issues in the family and children, and then there's other issues going on to the point where they feel like I can't do this no more. And so I kind of come into the home and offer them interventions to take care of themselves so they can stay emotionally regulated, right? Stay calm, keep their nervous system calm, so they be in a better position to even parent their child. Even if it's something simple as when a child is so emotionally dysregulated and having a meltdown, if you can send that child, I know every child is different, but if you can send that child to the room for a moment and you go in the room, take the 3 deep breaths, counting 7 to 10, just because we know when we're dysregulated, your amygdala part of the brain is firing off, and your hippocampus that's supposed to calm the brain is overworking, because you're already at the point, you're so escalated and dysregulated, you can't think. And you know what happens to the brain? You end up with short-term memory loss at that time. You can't think, you can't function, you have mental confusion, and so you can't even parent out of that type of state. You have to find a way to de-escalate and calm yourself down. Then you can think, and then you can come up with strategy. That's how we come up with problem solving skills, solutions. But until you learn how to, and so just taking practices every day of how to take care of yourself, have that time out. We give children time out all the time. We need time out. Yes, I'm speaking on behalf of parents. We need time out, and it's okay. It's not being selfish. It's taking care of yourself so you can be a better parent to that child, so you can have the energy, because it's an everyday stressor. First of all, we all live with stress every day, getting up, going to work, getting the children ready. That takes a certain amount of stress. But I mean, becoming overstressed or de-stressed to the point where like we can't give anymore. So then that's how I kind of come in and help the parent. Now, recently I had worked with a child who had they wasn't sure she had sensory diagnosis or not, because it's so similar to the symptoms in ADHD. So what happened was I was taking my client to see a occupational therapist, and so I began to talk with her, and she was sharing with me some things she do with the child while she's with her, and we're hitting the same areas. I'm doing more of the cognitive behavioral aspect, and she's dealing more with helping. She's also helping the child regulate the system, but we're going to talk about that too, because you with these weighty balls or devices, or she'll have the child lay on like a skateboard and kind of roll through the hallway, just so that she can get her body relaxed and calm her system down. Because sometimes, you know, she can tell when my client is angry or dysregulated, and I tell her, and it's so awesome because we're working on the same areas but in a different way, and I think that's so awesome.
Also, I just wanted to add, Cheryl, sometimes, especially for a child that is diagnosed with sensory processing disorder, a lot of times it's not behavior. A lot of times that their sensory needs are being met. And once you meet those needs, you will have a completely different child.
Yeah.
I mean, therapy, what we do is we tend to sometimes implement a sensory diet depending on what input they're looking for. If they're looking for proprioceptive, vestibular, what kind of, if they're, what are they seeking? Sometimes you have to provide joint compression, because sometimes, I guess, literally, if you can figure out what their sensory needs are and you meet those needs, literally their behavior will completely change.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times
I've seen it.
Behavior. And that's why sometimes because if those needs are not met, no matter how much behavioral therapy they get, things are going to
exactly
until you address the sensory challenges that they're being faced with.
Yes. Absolutely. And that's why I think it's so important to have that team. And one thing, when I do the intensive in-home therapy, we try to focus on the behaviors too much. I'm do more trauma focus, finding out the root cause of something. Like you say, meeting needs. For example, I had a client, her needs was she needed more attention and love in home. She was seeking attention. So she would get dysregulated in class and in school, and people think it's behavior. Like, no, she's not getting the love and affection she need at home. And when I started working with the parent and started seeing the change, and I told the parent, I guarantee you, if you change the way you address your child's issues, if you can do it more of authoritative style of parenting, less aggression, more loving and nurturing, I guarantee you that child would change. And she was able to see the difference when she was more sensitive to the child's needs and understanding, okay, I'm so busy, I need to spend more time with my child. I need to be the nurturing and give her attention. And when even something simple as that, you saw the child, her whole demeanor was so different, more calm, more respectful. You started seeing her using her manners, like, yes, ma'am, yes, mom. You didn't see that before. It was slamming doors, yelling, it's such a difference. And then again, collaborating with occupational therapists and other people, psychiatrists, psychologists, there's a whole team, of course, working with the child. So that's one thing I'm glad that I've learned that in this field so far, is that a lot of times we do focus on the behaviors instead of focusing on the root, on the trauma, what's causing the behavior. A behavior is really just a symptom of something else that's going on, that's underlying. So it's, you forever learning, you work with child, that's when you really get to experience, like, wow, okay.
Exactly. You definitely, I agree 100%. Like I said, because I guess I'm in a position where I work with adults and children. My caseload is from age 6 months to 104 years old. So I see the whole spectrum, it's like behavioral situations, even in adults. But since we're talking about kids, it's like I have children, they have so much energy. And it's like I always start with some type of hard, like scooter board activity, something that's going to heavy work activity before I do all the fine motor stuff at the end, because to try to do fine motor in the beginning when they're wound up is just not going to happen. So I always have to try with some type of sensory or some type of heavy lifting. Whether they love the scooter board. My kids, my little kids, they love the scooter board. So I always, because it's like it's a dual purpose. It's working on upper body strengthening. It's also providing proprioceptive and vestibular input. And like I said, so by the time we're finished and they go to sit down and do their fine motor activities or their handwriting, then you have a different child. And also
exactly, you have a different child. Absolutely.
The family, and it's like I said, it's a holistic approach, because I'm actually getting ready to start a workshop on the first Saturdays of every month, starting next month, because a lot of parents need support. They need questions from IEP questions, because it's like there's a lot of challenges and they need support. I didn't have support, unfortunately, when I was going through it. So I want to be able to provide support and create a space for parents to feel comfortable to ask questions and just to share without judgment.
Right.
Right.
So this is awesome. So this is all good. That's why I had to come on. This is so good, because parents do need the support.
Exactly.
They do need that kind of support group. Other parents who are dealing with it, and they can draw from each other and learn from each other. Like you say, you didn't have the support, but now you can offer that to other parents. And then being in a group, you can just find out so many different ways to handle different situations. I let Carlton jump in. It seemed like Carlton, let me see his profile. Weighted blankets for autism, world's worst sellers, coffee roaster, atheist, sci-fi fan, cooking and programmer. So
got a lot going on.
It keeps me busy during the day. Keeps me busy. Yeah, I was just going to jump on only because of the first one. My wife and I have a business. We make weighted blankets for kids typically that are on the autism spectrum, but it can be adults as well. And it just kind of to get the word out there, just because I know that even in our business, we constantly are running into parents who have no idea what resources are out there. We had somebody just the other day who's like, "Oh my God, I didn't even know weighted blankets existed." I mean, they literally, weren't getting any counseling. Nobody was helping them. They didn't know what resources were there. They didn't know where to turn. We got a letter back from them. Yeah, and it's not always like that, but we got a letter back from them about a week after they got their blanket. They went, "Oh, thank God, I finally got 4 hours of sleep during the night, because my child is now, is sleeping a little bit better, or he's going to sleep, he's calming down a little bit quicker when he goes to bed." I think that's an important thing. It does seem to be an area where there are a lot of people working in this arena, but sometimes the communication with people who need those services could be better. And I don't know if that is because of, because each state handles this differently and deals with the parents differently, or whether it's simply a matter of, autism itself isn't new, but I would say that awareness of autism is relatively new. And so I don't know if it's simply because we haven't had the time yet to organize well enough to let people know, what services are out there and what's available. What do you guys think?
I agree with you, Carlton, because in my experience from what I've dealt with, a lot of the services I found out about was basically through word of mouth. Kind of sitting in the waiting room of therapy, and parents are sharing, "Oh, my son started hippotherapy." "Really? What's hippotherapy?" "Oh, it's dealing with horses." "Oh, really? Where did he go?" "Oh, do you have the information?" And it's kind of like, that's how I found out. Most of my information was just kind of basically through word of mouth, because there aren't, unfortunately, a lot of services. I'm still on a waiting list for the past 7 years to get some services, because there's an agency for disabilities here. I've been on the waiting list probably for about 6-7 years, and I'm still on the waiting list. And I don't know.
That's incredible. That's a huge amount of time. Where are you? What state are you located in?
I'm in Florida.
You're in Florida. Okay, we're in Tennessee. We're in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So, okay, that's interesting. One of the things, especially since you're an OT, one of the things that we deal with all the time is that there's a lot of anecdotal information out there, but there's not a lot in the way of actual studies in some areas. So, especially dealing with weighted blankets, there are 1 or 2 primary studies, but they were done for children wearing weighted clothing, vests, pants, belts, that type of thing. So all of the weight recommendations for weighted blankets, for example, come from that study, but it doesn't really, it doesn't flow to weighted blankets. It shouldn't, right? Because obviously if you're wearing a vest, for example, and you say the vest is 5 pounds or 10 pounds or whatever it is, you're carrying the entire weight of that vest on your body, right? You got it on. But a weighted blanket, if a blanket's 10 pounds, you don't actually feel 10 pounds worth of weight. You only feel the part of the blanket that's on your body. Most of it's on the mattress. Exactly. And we've been struggling, actually, trying to find a way to get somebody to do a new study specifically for weighted blankets. So we can have so we can have some good data. I mean, all we have now, again, like everybody else, we have anecdotal, right? So the parent calls up and they say, "Oh, this worked great, and my child weighs 100 pounds, and we got him a 12-pound blanket, and he's happy." But again, a lot of that is age dependent too, and we're always telling parents, a lot of this, once you get away from the infant stage, the 2-year-old, 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, once you're into 7, 8, 9-year-old, a teen, it's more about preference in terms of the weight and actual, does it function well for them? Some people prefer light blankets. Some prefer a heavier blanket. Sorry, I'm going on and on in my little speech here. But
okay.
That's okay.
Carlton, I just wanted to say one thing. One of the things that I've noticed when it comes to weighted objects in general is it's kind of like medicine to me. When you use it for too long, you become kind of like your body becomes adjusted to it, where sometimes you have to may have to grade it and get a heavier weight. Like my son, for example, when he was in the kindergarten, I made him a weighted therapy bear. I made it, myself, because to get them online was very expensive. Yep. He's gonna be 13 this year. He still to this day has that same bear that he goes to when he needs it. And I dare not throw it away because, oh my goodness.
Oh, that would be the end of the world, yes.
That poor thing has been duct taped. It has been sewn up through the years. But you know what? To this day, because he'll be 13, and he had it from kindergarten, he loves that therapy bear. He goes, it calms him. Wow. He calls it his best friend. He goes, it helps to relax him. When he was in kindergarten, I had it put in his IEP for him to be able to have it at school when he needed it. So whenever he felt like he needed to be regulated, he would go to the teacher, or she would notice things, and she would give it to him, and he would, he would have it.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely all in favor of weighted beds, weighted blankets, weighted, the therapy bears, because they all, I've seen them, they work.
I think, yeah, and I guess the other piece, I guess I just want to throw out there too. I think, this is one of these areas where it's not like selling weighted blankets is not like selling coffee mugs, right? Everybody needs my coffee mug. It's the best in the world. We understand that with weighted blankets. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, that it's not a panacea. It's not that you're gonna. If parents are thinking, "I want to get a weighted blanket and all my troubles are going to go away," you're in a dream world. You need to snap out of it. That isn't going to happen, right? But it can be helpful at times, and that depends on the child, but it's not a magic bullet. And so you need to combine that. Like I said, you need to combine that, with seeing an occupational therapist, with seeing a physician, with, like you were saying before, you need the whole team working together, and everybody contributes a little piece, and hopefully that makes everyone's life a little bit easier.
Exactly. It's a supplemental, not a replacement.
Exactly. Right. You mentioned too the weights. That's the holy grail, right? I mean, even I love a weighted blanket. I do. I sleep with one. I sleep with two, actually. I'm telling my secrets here. But the holy grail sort of a weighted blankets, is trying to find a way to change the weight. And there is, and I've beat my head against the wall many times if I have no hair. There is no way it seems to do that. That people are willing to live with, right? You can put zippers in the blanket. But then the kids don't like the sensation of zippers on the blanket. It's whatever you do to make it possible to change out the weight also changes the feeling and the texture of the blanket itself.
Carlton, what about if you add some type of a pocket with a little bit of Velcro to kind of keep it closed?
The same problem. I think we have the same problem there because, for example, Charlene. I don't know if you know Charlene. She's on here with her son Charlie. The same thing is that not all children that are on the spectrum are this way, but there are a lot of children that can be very destructive or very rough on things, and so there is a risk in making a pocket that can be opened up because it's Velcro. That now the child gets into that. Now you got the pellet, you got the polyfill, you got at the very least a mess. You might have a danger there depending on the age of the child. So it's sort of one of those things. The easier that you make it to get in for the parent, the more of a risk it becomes for the child to get in. So yeah, it is, but we'll take any ideas that the universe has out there for us in this regard, because we would love to do that. Because like you said, we know they are an expensive item. So, most people cannot afford to go out and buy one, every 6 months because they want to, get a new one and change the weight on it. So.
Exactly. That's some really good information. Like I said, I've seen all those things plus the sensory diet, which I think I found personally helpful for my son, because when he was doing OT many years ago, they had to prescribe him a sensory diet, and which and they gave me some paper that had pictures to kind of like when you're feeling jumpy, this is what you do. When you're feeling so I would ask him, do you feel like a turtle? Feel like a turtle, or do you feel like a rabbit? And he was able. That was how you're able to gauge where he was, sensory-wise. If he felt slow like a turtle, he might have needed some stimulation. If he felt jumpy like popcorn, he might need some, something to help calm him down. So it just,
Well, I'm going to bow out. I'm going to let you guys get going. I know you're doing this broadcast here. I don't want to take up all the time, but I want to just come in and mention that, and just sort of as a resource I put a link on the right. So, for you guys and for anybody that happens to watch this, but I think you're doing a great service, and I really appreciate the fact that you guys have the blab out here. So thank you for letting me come in for a second.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Yes, Carlton. Thank you so much.
Take care, guys.
Okay.
You too. Thank you.
Oh, that was good. Y'all had me thinking about the swings. I had a 6-year-old client, and she would have to get in that swing. I forgot what you call it. and it will help to regulate her before we can even get into a session. And she got so used to, I mean, but this wasn't a positive sense where she knew herself, okay, I'm going to go on my swing. She'll swing for like 5 and 10 minutes, and then she's all ready for the session now. So that, I see that there's so many tools. I've learned about these things just being in the field. I didn't know nothing about the swing and the weight jacket and blankets until.
Sorry. As they get older, you want to teach them to be able to identify what they're feeling, what their needs are, because sometimes you may not know, but if the child knows what they like you said, she knew to go to the swing because she knew that's the input that she needed at that time that was going to give her what she needed. So it's all about, even if they're little, they don't know, but you want to kind of, as a therapist, you want to educate them, in their own, at their level, what they
appropriate, give so they can understand.
That's why we said, do you feel jumpy like popcorn, or do you feel slow like a turtle?
Right.
Where they can kind of verbalize to you how they feel, on their level.
Right.
And then
I use a lot of psychoeducation, so it's age appropriate, so they can kind of identify what their body goes through, like even their own triggers, even learning about antecedents, things that lead up to a certain meltdown or something that they have. And I like when they can, a lot of times they'll say, I feel bubbly, or I feel hot, or I get a headache on my hands, and just to remind them, okay, and then of course we go into the next level. Okay, when you feel these things, then we get into what you can do to kind of help you stay regulated. But I want to get back on that parent, because we're supposed to be talking about the parents. One thing I wanted to mention, like strategies, and then allow you to share the strategies that you may offer parents as well. Okay. And I do a lot of emotional regulation, emotional help, because without that you can't do anything. So talking about maintaining emotional regulation and offering, I have made my little notes here so I won't get off topic. Little things like to help them maintain, like I said, a calm nervous system, so they can tolerate, so they can cope when they do go out in public or before they take on a certain task. And one of them is just to do the breathing. And I say, well, let's do the breathing first. And this it does wonders for the body. We all should be doing that in the morning, afternoon, and night. Exactly. Even before I work with a client, I've learned to do deep breathing. I'll sit in the car, because you don't know what you're going to encounter. And this is where you tell parents, it's like you're preparing your nervous system to be able to cope with what if that child does start to act up when you go into the store. Well, now you prepared your system, your stress response to that situation will be better, because you prepared yourself mentally and physically to deal with that situation or deal with outbursts and all of that as well. And again, I mentioned earlier, telling the parent, learn how to take a time for self, the time out, where they can just, if it's 10 minutes, give yourself permission to do that. It's okay. You're not ignoring the child. You're always with the child. But when you teach the child too, as the child get older, and if they can understand cognitive wise, you can have the conversation with the child. Mommy needs time out. Mommy needs to pull it together and gather her thoughts, so mommy can be there to help you. You can teach the child how to respond. I have a friend of mine who, she don't have children who are diagnosed with anything, but she knows that she battles with anxiety and stress sometimes. So she, as her children get older, even with her husband, she'll say, I need the time out right now. Instead of going off and going to her own outbursts, she'll prepare everybody else. So she have given herself permission to go off into her own space and do what she needs to do, and then come back in, and then everybody's happy. But I think that's such a great strategy, because you'll be a better wife, you'll be a better mother, you'll be able to cope with a lot of situations. And I also learned something about postponing worry. If something arises that you have no control over right now, you can postpone the worry and say, okay, you know what? Later on, I'm going to come back to that, because you can't do nothing about it right now anyway. And it helps you to focus on the present, what's happening now. Because a lot of times people that battle with, anxiety and stress and depression, they'll go from 0 to 100. But if they learn how to, like I said, regulate themselves and say, okay, I can't do nothing about that right now. And I teach the client mothers how to do self-talk. I said, look, I practiced self-talk since I was a child. I went through a lot of my own traumas as a child, and I've learned how powerful that is to talk to myself and say, Cheryl, relax, calm down. It's not the end of the world. It's not that deep. It's going to be okay. And I do that. You're not crazy for doing that. It's therapy. Self-talk is therapy. And I'm teaching mothers and fathers to do that as well. Self-talk. This is how you self-regulate yourself. I'm going to deal with that later. Not right now, but so what strategies do you use to kind of help parents, help them better cope? And
the same thing I would tell myself. For example, first of all, we are going to feel frustrated. You are going to feel overwhelmed, and that's normal, and it's okay. But I always would tell like you said, take a time out, 15, 30 minutes. Take a walk. Read a book, listen to some soft music, maybe some jazz, take a nice warm bath, just 15, 30 minutes, but you need that time, especially when you are starting to feel overwhelmed, because like I said, when you're feeling stressed and when you're feeling worked up, your child is going to feel it. Because I remember getting that same way in public and just trying to be quiet, come on, getting frustrated.
Yes.
And the more the more frustrated I got, the louder he cried. And I'm like,
yes,
oh my God, why is he crying? But I had to learn that, number one, I had to just count to 10, breathe. Right. There was a time where when a therapist, I think it might have been a mental health professional that came over to the home. Okay. With my daughter. And she gave me an assessment to kind of see where my stress level was. And it was through the roof. So her next visit, she brought in the ocean, some CDs with the ocean and the rain, to kind of help me to de-stress, because I was very, but first of all, I always let them know to be able to identify with how they feel, because some parents feel guilty for feeling the way that they do it. But
I was going to bring that up too, right? Yes.
And you need to own those feelings. They're yours. And there's nothing with the way, with you feeling feeling overwhelmed or frustrated. You're not a bad parent. That's right. You're feeling at that moment, and you're entitled, and you need to own it and walk in it. And that's why I don't like for people to judge parents, because they may feel, a certain kind of way at that moment. Let them, it's a process, and allow them to do their process. Some parent might find out their child got diagnosed and may be okay. And, and some parent may, totally break down, but guess what? Everybody is an individual.
That's right.
To feel the way they want to feel. It doesn't make it doesn't make, them, they must not love their child because look at them, the way they're at. No, that's right. I had to walk through this thing myself, to be in the position where I am now, because before I did occupational therapy, I was a homemaker. I was a stay-at-home mother for 7 years. I spend every day with my kids, take them to therapy. I did PT, OT, speech, ABA, behavioral modification, all of those different services I did with my children. That was my life. It was through all of this that I discovered occupational therapy. I would have never discovered this. Had I not gone through what I went through. And I love what I do. I enjoy it. There's not one day I go to work where I'm like, oh God, I really don't feel like going to work. Oh my God, can I just call? I love my job. I love helping people, caregivers. That's awesome. Because like I said, I was where they are. And also it helps me at the clinic, because a lot of the parents come in, I can tell in their face they're frustrated. I can tell that they're overwhelmed. I can tell they're tired. Yes. So what I do is I take 10 minutes, I sit and I talk with them. I let them know my story, because I want them to know I've been there. I'm there where you are. Yes. And I'm here to help you. I care about you beyond these doors. When you leave here, I still care about your child. So whether it's helping you advocate for your child to get services at school, that's what I do, because, I don't just look at, okay, they come in for 1 hour, I work with them and they go home and that's it. But to me, it's beyond that. It's when they're with me, I give them my phone number, call me, text me whenever. If you have a question, text me. I don't care. If I don't know the answer, I'll get the answer for you. Because like I said, they have so many outside stressors, even, aside from dealing with their kids, they're fighting with the school. That's a big one that I'm fighting with the school, trying to get children's services, because a lot of, unfortunately, the school systems sometimes don't want to provide certain services, and they're having to fight, and have to fight with the school, having to deal with all the therapies and all the things,
That's a lot.
the child is going through. It is so stressful. Get a massage. I always tell them sometimes you might just need to get a massage.
Absolutely, that's right.
I mean, I used to get what they call. I was offered what do you call it? Respite. Respite is a great service. It's basically the child for a few hours and they will watch them.
Yes.
It didn't benefit me because I had 3 children and they only were going to do respite.
Okay.
So it's like, if you can take all children and give me a few hours to myself, then that's beautiful. But to take one child and I still have 2 with me, that's not.
You still have 2, right?
So for a parent who may have somebody to take those other 2 children, or who may only have 1 child, and they can get the for a few hours, that is, awesome. They can have a few hours to go shopping or go get their nails done or go get their hair done themselves. So so that
is great. I didn't know about respite neither till I got in the field. Now I have a couple of sometimes of my clients, sometimes they in foster care, foster homes. And when I started hearing about respite parents, I said, what's respite parents? I heard of respite care, but I never heard respite parents. And one of the mothers was telling me how when she go away for the weekend, she'll leave her child with a respite parent. And I'm like, I think that's awesome. It gives her a break.
I didn't know it was the whole weekend. When I was offered the service, it was only they come in for a few hours. Now, wait a minute.
One of the mothers had to do a conference and she needed somewhere for that child to be. And so she was able to stay with that family. Matter of fact, it was a mother and a father that was respite parents. I said, I think that was so awesome. I don't know if it's special cases. I don't know, but they have them where they can stay more than 1 day. And she was able to get a break, and she was an older lady. So she definitely, it's a lot. She's been doing it for years, doing foster care. And I think at this point, she was just really getting tired. She had more than I can even count of foster children. But I just thought it was
She's a foster parent?
She's a foster parent. She's been doing it for years.
Maybe they're different. It's different for them because they are doing foster care. Maybe there are certain services that are available to them.
Right.
Available to your typical caregiver. Because I was like, wait a minute. Hold on. Let me call the station.
Yeah, she had a whole weekend. Imagine everybody can have that. That'll be a good service. But I want to talk about your book.
Yes.
I had a couple of surprises on here. Picking Up the Pieces, Life Beyond Diagnosis. And congratulations for making the #1 bestseller on the Amazon list. I'm so happy about that. And I want you to kind of talk about your book. And you did mention some things that you went through yourself and you was able to identify with it. But what made you want to write this book?
Well, first of all, Cheryl, this book is 7 years in the making. This is something that I've been wanting to tell my story for so many years, but there's so much to tell, and I didn't really know where to start, how to put it in writing. I wanted to get somebody to write it for me. So what happened was I was in the Bestsellers Guild, which is on Facebook, and I was talking to the kid who's she's one of the, the administrators of the group. She said, listen, you can do a short story. I go, a short story, really? So what I decided to do was take a segment of my life, probably the pivotal segment of my life, and talk about it. So this book doesn't cover my entire journey, but it definitely covers a very important, a very significant pivotal point. It talks about finding out, that my son was diagnosed with autism. It talks about, emotionally what I went through, being angry with God, the physical challenges that I began to feel in my body, the collapse of my marriage. It talks about one of the mistakes that I made, of course, at the time, I didn't know it, and I encourage parents never to do this if they are, to stop. Once I found out my son had autism, I have 3 children, and my 2 oldest children are 1 year and 1 day apart. So what I did was, once they told me, first of all, I didn't believe them, so I got a second opinion. And
I understand.
The second opinion came back, the same thing. Yeah. So what I did was I began to basically begin to channel all my energy and all my focus on my oldest son, because I felt in my heart at that time that he had to now be, do everything that I felt his brother was never going to do. He had to be the smart. He had to be the most athletic. I began to help him to be a caregiver. I go, listen, I'm not going to be here forever. I was trying to train and teach him how to be able to be responsible for his brother,
Okay.
at some point, when they're older, he was never going to be able to go to college. If he goes to college, wherever he goes, it has to be where his brother is. It's like, and I began to see, first of all, I felt guilty. And then second of all, I began to see how sad he was because it was a lot of pressure, because I didn't give him a break. It's like if he comes home from school, he couldn't get a bad grade because, no, you have to get an A. You have to do this. You have to do that. I began to put so much stress and so much pressure on him, and it was like like I said, I just basically focused on my son's disability and not his abilities.
Right. That's a good point. Mm-hmm.
It's like, finally I had an aha moment where I said, you know what? First of all, I need to educate myself on what autism is, because at that time I didn't know what it was. It just sounded bad.
Right.
So
right.
It was. So I said,
what's that? Right.
Exactly. So all I knew was it's a lifelong disorder. So when you hear something that's lifelong, you're thinking, oh my God, this is something really bad. Oh my God. Oh my gosh.
Right.
Like, I had to kind of enroll in Google University. I had to begin to myself to see what it was. I learned it was a spectrum. I had to kind of figure out where he was on the spectrum. I had to get the necessary early interventions, because early intervention is so important.
It is.
That he is where he is today because of early intervention. Because it's unfortunate some parents don't find out till later, but for those parents who are fortunate enough to get an early diagnosis, I encourage you to begin to get your speech therapy, occupational therapy, your physical therapy, your ABA if necessary, your behavioral modification, whatever services that you need to begin immediately, because it's going to be key in your child, meeting those milestones, Like I said, once I became educated and I became informed, things begin to shift. I began to speak positive affirmations over my son. It was no longer, he will go to college. He will be everything that he was created to be. He will get married one day if he chooses to. He will have a family. I had to begin to speak those things over his life, And now, like I said, fast forward to him today, he's 12, he'll be 13. I mean, he's in the National Junior Honor Society.
Awesome.
He's getting ready. Actually, he and his brother are going to New York on Wednesday to the United Nations for 4 days.
Wow.
So they were selected out of the kids in their school. They were 2 of 18 kids selected to represent their school at the UN next.
Look at that.
And he's going to
look at God. I love it.
Over the UNICEF Committee for Early Education. I mean, he was just doing his speech for me earlier, and it's like, he tries out for sports, he's in student government. Like I said, he's in National Junior Honor Society. He was in drama. He has 2 plays under his belt. He has thrived so much socially, having a team, having a good IP team at school, having his therapist, because they're like your family. They're like your extended family. So having them, provide that support to him is the reason why he had his first girl crush last summer.
Oh Lord,
that's a whole other can of and
wow.
He is like he's like any typical teen, preteen. He's on his phone, He's texting his friends. He is so much more outgoing. He likes to write. Actually, he wrote a chapter in the book. He wrote chapter.
Really? Oh, okay.
He did.
Excellent.
He's known for a long time that he has autism. But I always the way I explain it to him, because people say, well, how do you explain to your child, that they have.
Right.
So the way first of all, he found out his brother blurted it out one day. So he came to me and asked me, I said, well,
kids.
What? It's kind of like, one little boy, one kid might have blonde hair. One may have brown, one may wear glasses, one may, but guess what? They're all the same, it's just that they, so he doesn't look at having autism as a disability. It's a part of who he is, but it's not who he is. There's so much, in him, that he doesn't, like I said, the names in the book have been changed because he's a preteen and he goes, Mom, can you just change the names? He wants me to respect his privacy. So,
that's right.
So I said,
that's good.
But I said, well, if you could tell one child or one parent, what would your advice be to them? He goes, that there's life beyond the diagnosis, which is why we gave it that name, because there's so much more. prepping him to go to high school in another year. We're talking about colleges. You know, what does he want to be when he goes to college? You know, of course it changes. He wants to be a forensic photographer. He wants to be an actor. He wants to be these different things. But guess what? He can be those things. He can be that he wants to be. And that's what I tell him all the time. When he wants to be part of if he wants to submit his an essay for a contest, or if he wants to, you know, join the drama club, if he wants to, whatever he wants to join, I in his way. Because I have a rule in my home is when you hit 3rd grade, you have to be involved in some type of an activity at school.
That's good.
The reason why I do this is because, especially with kids on the spectrum, being involved in an extracurricular activity is so important because socially they are challenged. So when you are, when you're in an organization or a club or a group at school, relationships are going to organically develop. You're going to with someone once a week, or you're planning some volunteer opportunities, or you're working closely with someone, you're going to naturally just develop a relationship. So that's where his relationship started, was through, you know, he was a student government first. So that's where he made his friends. You know, because because he didn't have the skills at the time to be able to go up to someone and say, "Hi, you know, I'm Robert. How are you? Nice to meet." He couldn't hold those conversations. You know, and also when you're involved in those groups, it also teaches you vocational skills, because when you're when you're having a fundraiser and you're over you're selling donuts and you're kind of taking money and giving those are vocational skills that you're learning. You know,
that's right.
And sometimes people don't want to put their kids in it because they have certain diagnoses, but no. You know, you have to parent the child and not the diagnosis. You can't coddle them. You can't say, oh, they can't do this because they have autism. Oh, they can't do this because they have ADHD or something. No, you are limiting your child. You have to parent them. Just parent them. You know, of course they're going to have their challenges, and you're going to be there to help them. You know, and work the challenges, but just allow them to be, allow them to blossom, see what they can become, I always get a lot of flack for this. This is very unpopular, but this may be controversial. This is just me personally. I respect everybody's where they are. But for me personally, I tell people say, well, if there was a cure tomorrow, would you take it? No, I would not. Because I can't imagine my son being any different. I love his personality. I love him, and I love everything about him, and I can't imagine him acting any differently than he is. The little quirkiness, the little his humor is like, oh my goodness. The things that he said, I can't imagine him being. I accept him for who he is, and I love him for who he is. I wouldn't change not one thing about him. I respect any other parent if that's what they choose, but for me, I'm okay with with him. I love him, and I love, like I said, he comes up with these little statistics. We call him the stat guy. It's like he'll come up with these, like, if you tell him something, he has a stat for everything. He does. His older brother's voice is changing. Well, Mom, the reason why his voice is changing is because of larynx and da-da-da-da-da. He always has something for everything, But
that's awesome. You got to see his personality, him blooming and maturing, and that's awesome. And I heard other parents say that as well. And they just learned to love that child for who they were, who they are in the family, and they learn to be content, and I think that's an awesome thing. And when you talked about the reason why you put your child in certain curriculum activities, every parent should do that. I was going to do a Periscope actually about intentionally and strategically raising your children, because even with my daughter, I strategically placed her or allowed her to join certain groups, like even within church, like the dance ministry, singing, and then she started going to camp, because my focus was social skill development, learning how to be assertive, learning how to live in a world with different personalities, some very strong, some very aggressive. And I know that my child was like me, a little timid, kind of shy. I didn't want her to live in a world with fear. I know, like you said, a lot of parents sometimes limit their child because of their own fear. And that's understanding, but you don't want to limit them because you'll never be able to find out what your child can do. And it's all right if they fall off. They're learning, they're progressing, they're moving forward. You even get to find out what your child can do. So you limit yourself when you allow your child to express themselves. You find out their gifts, their talents, their abilities. You know, you're their life coach. You are your child's life coach. And so what it did for my child has good, she learned, she knows how to assert herself. She has good leadership skills because she have learned, even in the dance ministry at her church, which is one of the, we had a big congregation, a church in Queens in New York. She, after a while, her gifts made room for her. And I said, you know, your gifts will make room for you. When she started ministering, do dance on the pulpit in front of the pastors. And she wondered, why, Mom, they keep picking me? I said, but first of all, it's your attitude. You're humble. You're not looking for that. But people see the leadership quality in you and they put you in that position. I said, but it took you going through ADM and learning how to be part of a group. First of all, you know, when kids growing up and they face adolescence, they still learning how to find the identity or where they fit in and what group they belong to. And so it gave her a sense of belonging. And see, this empowers the child too. Putting your child in those different curriculum activities, it helps your child feel empowered. And they learn how to live in a world. Mommy's not always going to be there.
I gotta grab my charger. I have to grab my charger. Give me 1 second.
You know, they have to learn that moms or dads are not always going to be in the picture all the time. And they have to learn how to self-soothe. They have to learn how to problem solve on their own. They have to learn how to work out certain things in case, you know, you're not present with them. So it's so many benefits to putting your child in certain groups or curriculum activities, whether it's sports or art or dance. Performing arts is enhancing by itself. Because like Kendra said, they learn so many different skills, developmental skills for life, you know. So it's a big picture. Don't just look at, well, what the child did. Look at how it's going to help them for life. Now my daughter, she called me the other day and said, Mom, they want her to be part of a leadership team. She's 21 years old now. She started off going to a Christian camp since she was young. Mm-hmm. So she's been working with the camp during the summer. Now they want her to be part of the leadership team. You know, she started being a counselor. First, she was what you call assistant counselor. Then she moved to counselor. Now they want to be part of the managerial, like the leadership team. I said, you see how those skills, even back then, I would make her do certain things. I would set her up, though. She wouldn't know. Like, she loved to sing. So what I would do was, if we went to a particular program, I would whisper to somebody and go, my daughter can sing. If you can kind of get up. Exactly. And so that should be a little. I said, but love, you got to go do it. You never know if you can do it. How you going to overcome the fear? It's okay if you mess up. Give yourself permission, first of all, to embrace making mistakes. Nobody came into the world knowing everything. We've learned through our failure. So I'm boosting her self-esteem, and all of those experiences she had with singing and dancing in front of people has put her before great people. When she was part of the celebration of gospel on TV, I'm getting calls. I see your daughter on TV. You know, so she's been in a lot of different platforms. But like, it's because of those, going back to even putting your son, you don't know where that's going to take him in life.
And keep in mind, Cheryl, my boys are 1 year apart. So what it does for his self-esteem, because if I tell him, if I continue to tell him he can't, you know,
right,
his brother's doing things, he's going to think something is wrong with him, and I never want him to ever feel
right,
something. Yes. Him, you know,
yeah.
He's at the age now. He'll say, "Well, Mom, you know, he'll test me." Like his brother took a big test for high school next year. He goes, "Well, Mom, do you think if I take the test next year, I can get in?" Because he's just wanting to see what I'm going to say. I go, "Okay, you work on that math, you definitely can get in."
Right.
You know, I never tell him when he comes to me, "Oh,
that's right,
doing this. I want to," you know, one funny story, when he was going to try out for MMUM, he wrote a speech. And so I said, "Well, honey, can you read me your speech?" And this was after the fact. He goes, at the end of the speech, he told them, it was the superintendent of the school, from the school board, it was the principal and some teachers. He told them, "I strongly suggest that you pick me." And I'm thinking,
see, I love it. He was assertive. He was like
that he was confident.
Yes.
You know, and the funny thing is his confidence has flourished. It's like he's not afraid. Like I asked him, "Are you nervous about going to New York? Are you nervous about speaking?" He goes, "No, mommy, I'm excited. I'm looking forward." My other son, the quote unquote neurotypical child, which is the one,
right.
You know, oh, mommy, I'm nervous. I'm just nervous to speak. You know, but the thing is, I think because throughout the years, allowing him to try things, you know,
yes.
he was successful. Some things he failed. He tried out for every sport in the school. He never made the team, but he continues to try out every single year.
I love it.
In sixth grade, he tried out for football. He didn't make it. He tried out for volleyball. He didn't make it. He tried out for soccer. He tried out for basketball. But you know what happens when I say, "Honey, what are you going to do since you didn't make it?" "Mommy, I'll just try out for the next sport." Because
I love it.
Because I instill self-esteem. I never tell him he can do anything.
That's right.
You know?
Right.
And it's like, and that's what you have to do. You have to, you know, just parent your child. You know, love them where they are. Like I said.
That's right.
Make mistakes, yes. Are they going to need your help? Because I had to help him in the beginning to stay organized.
Right.
I had to be his secretary.
Right.
I was his secretary. I wrote out his agenda. I made sure everything was in order. I used to even incorporate some of his things with his OT. Like, for example, when he was in student government, he had to make a box. And so what I did was when this OT came over, I said, "Listen, he has to make a box for student government. Can that be a part of his therapy, working on handwriting and working on fine motor?" She said, "Sure." So she kind of incorporated that into his therapy. You know, he was in a play. You know, he has a speaking role. He goes out for the big parts. He didn't get them, but I appreciate that he tries. You know, and I think that stems back to, you know, allowing him to be a child. Not focusing on what he can't do, but focusing on what he can do, because believe it or not, they will surprise you. Even the child on the lower end of the spectrum has a gift, has something to give. I have a kid who, you know, may need a caregiver her whole life, but guess what? I can put on that song it's a song called Slide. I think it's one.
Okay.
You know, when I put that song on, when I tell you this girl who who doesn't talk, she lights up. She jumps up. She knows she starts to say the words to the song. She starts to do the movement. But you know what? That's when she likes music. I discovered that's what she likes. You know, but you have to figure out what they like. You know, or what they're good at, because every child is good at something. I don't care what. Every child has a gift.
That's right.
I don't care if they have autism, if they have CP, if they have ADHD, or what they have. Every child has a gift, and as parents, we need to tap into that gift.
Right. I was just responding to somebody. I want you to go back, because I'm thinking about, again, when we talk about the parents, when you mention the things that you do with with your children, you giving them structure, which also helps you in the long run. It helps you as well. When you have structure, like putting in programs or saying at a certain time, we're going to do this. So when you get a certain age, you're going to be involved in that. But something you just mentioned is now, this made me thought about how when you create structure in your home, it also alleviates the parent. It helps you organize your own self as well, you know, instead of just being all over the place and not having any structure, not having the kids involved in anything. That can be more overwhelming as well. So I believe creating structure also helps the parent feel more in control, because things are predictable, and it helps the child, of course, too, you know, understanding.
Something you just said, speaking of predictable, one of the things I discovered is I don't want to be predictable. Let me tell you why. When my son was younger, everything had to be in a certain order. He would ask me, for example, "Mommy, what are we doing today?" Whatever I told him, in that order, he expects for it to happen. And
right.
Sometimes things change. He would have a meltdown.
Right.
So what I had to begin to do was say to him, "Listen, honey, sometimes, you know, for example, if I say I'm going to go to we're going to get out, we're going to have breakfast, we're going to go to the bank, we're going to go here, and I go, you know what, the bank isn't open, honey, and sometimes things change." And he had to learn that sometimes things are going to change in life. You know, they may set out to do something, but, you know, your teacher, you might go to class and your teacher says, "Tomorrow we're going to do this," and then the next day you come in and something changes and they don't do that. They have to understand that things are going to change, and we have to kind of, you know, flow with the change. You know, he used to melt down at therapy because of, you know, the therapist was trying to tell him no. You know, like, for example, he was taking hypnotherapy and he felt in his heart that the horses belonged to him. because they gave him the same horse every time he went. So he felt that was his horse. So
right.
No, that's not your horse. That belongs to them. But he would have
right.
But like I said, it's a process.
I know, but that's true. I mean, I wasn't meaning that, man. I mean, like, I guess with the structure where you set your own limits yourself, so you have your schedule organized, and you can give more time for yourself. You know what time the child is going to go to whatever program, and during that time, it's almost like a mother who breastfeed, and they always tell you, a new mother with a child, try to take a nap when the child is taking a nap. Of course, it's kind of hard to do sometimes, but I'm helping a mother now with that, breastfeeding now. She's breastfeeding her child, so it takes a lot out of her. So I'm like, when your child goes to sleep, you try to get rest. So when the child wakes up, you feeling refreshed and you're feeling better. Creating structure is going to help you decrease some stress and anxiety in your own life. So that's the part I was kind of bringing up. But absolutely, most of my children I deal with, I counsel with, I have to teach them to be able to cope with the word no. It seems like the word no for them is like devastating, the end of the world. They have to learn how to cope with the change of events. Because I teach the same thing. Things may happen in life, and it's challenging teaching a 5 and 6-year-old all this. So I use a lot of visuals and psychoeducation and just and animated, video, so they can kind of see that it's okay. Things going to change. Things can't always be the same. It's part of how the world is. And no, it's not a bad thing. So they don't feel the word no is like the end of the world. They don't feel threatened by no. I notice that's like a trigger for them. It's like when they say no, it's like, oh my God, the world ends and whatever. But I want to ask you, what do you do now to help yourself stay stress-free as much as possible? What do you do for yourself? What timeouts do you take?
Well, it's funny you say that, because thank goodness he's older now. And
right.
He, for example, right now he's in his room, he's on his computer, he's got his, he's doing his gaming because he likes to play game, he likes to be on the computer. The funny thing is he likes all kinds of music. That's what I discovered. He likes music we're talking from the Beach Boys to Elvis, all the way up to Salt and Pepper. His taste in music is so broad, and I was like, oh wow. And
they love music. Yeah, I love music.
Right now he can entertain himself. He goes to his room. He has his music. He has his computer. He has his TV.
Okay.
Like I said, because like I said, he's at a different point now. Before it was like I got into creating websites. To me, that was very serious.
Okay.
When my kids were younger and they would go to bed, I would just start teaching myself how to build websites, because I enjoyed it. It was creative. It was kind of my outlet. And I to this day enjoy creating websites. I enjoy social media. I enjoy connecting with my friends through my Facebook groups.
Right.
My outlets, And it helps that he is at a point that he can pretty much, he's self-sufficient in that respect. But one of the things to touch on was when he was little, he and his brother used to bicker back and forth like siblings do. And his brother would keep jabbing him just with words, just going at him.
Just trigger him. Yeah, trigger.
So he had the meltdown. So I used to coddle him and say, don't do that to your brother. So I had to step back for a minute. I had to teach him how to speak up for himself. I had to teach him how to advocate for himself. So when those situations started to occur, I go, first of all, is it true? No. I encourage him to speak up for himself. Now, if they go back and forth, he gives as good as he gets.
Right.
I had to teach him, that there are going to be kids that are going to be mean to you, that may say mean things to you. You've got to learn how to stand up for yourself. I'm not going to be there always. I can't step in. I stopped stepping in. I had to allow him to be able to speak up for himself, to advocate for himself. Like, for example, if I need him to tell something happens at school, if it's nothing major, I tell him, go to your teacher, and I give him the tools. Talk to your teacher, tell them X, Y, Z, because he needs to learn how to self-advocate for himself.
That's right.
Because I'm not always. I have, for example, they just started, to become bus riders. I'm teaching him, I'm giving him little responsibility. There was one day where he had to give a money order, a cashier's check or something to his teacher for a trip. So his brother wanted to give it. He goes, well, him, he's very irresponsible. But, he goes, but I knew that was a moment for me to show him that I trust him. And so, I said, well, I'm going to show you that I trust you. I'm going to give it to you, and I want you to give it to your teacher. And this is going to be because I wanted him to see that I trust him. He gave it to the teacher, and that was a big ego boost, because if I would have taken it from him and given it to his brother, do you realize what that would have done to his self-esteem? He would have felt that I trusted his brother more, that I didn't have confidence in him, and I didn't want him to ever feel that way. So I always try and give him, like, for example, when we go to a restaurant, or he goes, Mommy, can you take me to Jimmy John's? I'll sit in the car. I will tell him, go in there, purchase your food. I allow him to go in on his own to purchase his food on his own. And when he came out, he goes, Mommy, that felt so good. He felt so independent.
Right.
He felt so good because I allowed him to go in by himself.
So independent, yes.
And to order his food, to pay his money, to get his change, to make, that was, and it also showed him that I trust him, and I allowed him to,
right.
Mommy, that felt so good. And I go, really, honey, what do you mean? He goes, Mommy, I felt like so independent. I felt like a big boy. I felt really good,
yes.
Because he did it. And those are things that you have to do. For example, I wanted to go to New York. I was like, oh my God, I gotta go.
Right.
He said, no, Mommy, can we do this on our own? So to allow them to go to school.
Okay.
Is a huge I have to do this to show them I trust them.
Exactly.
He's going to go to college. What am I going to do? Go to college with him? No.
Exactly. So what are you going to do when you're in New York?
Oh my! Well, of course.
What are you going to do with yourself?
I don't know. I don't know. I still have my daughter here. He keeps asking me, Mommy, are you going to cry? Are you going to cry? I tell him, baby, I can't guarantee you that I'm not going to cry. But,
I want you to have fun and enjoy yourself. That's awesome. We're about to wrap up though, but I wanted you to mention your website and, where people can buy your book from, because I think it's really helpful. It is very helpful to parents as well. And then we'll sign off.
Well, first of all, my website is www.parentingbeyondautism.com. I'm going to actually put up here, I made this, hopefully you guys can see it and take a screenshot. I also have an IEP guide, it's called A Quick Guide to Navigating the IEP Process. That's the website at the bottom if you wanted to purchase that. My book is available on Amazon. It's called Life Beyond the Diagnosis. Let me go ahead and put that up one more time for you guys. It's Life Beyond the Diagnosis, Picking Up the Pieces by
awesome.
Garcia. That's my book is on Amazon. And again, my website is parentingbeyondautism.com. That's www.parentingbeyondautism.com.
Excellent.
And so Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, or Anchor, it is the OT Strategist. That's the OT Strategist on Instagram, Instagram, Twitter, Anchor, Periscope. I'm going to be thinking about doing something for the month of April on Periscope.
Right, autism.
Challenge myself. I want to scope every day for the month of April because April is Autism Awareness Month, and I want to scope every day, just basically talking about different things, OT related, autism related, whether it be talking about IEPs, whether it be talking about strategies and tools, whether it's just advice and tips. I want to just scope every day. So you can follow me on Periscope. That's the OT Strategist. And I'm just so excited that we had this blog today. I'm just hoping that we at least help at least one person that I'm like, yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm going to try to tune in when I can, because my schedule. I'm in everybody's home doing counseling from adults to the children. And for those of you who don't know, I'm an inspirational life coach. I'm known as inspirational and empowerment coach. I Get Your Life Back Inspirational Life Coaching. My website is getyLifeback.com. I do parent coaching. Let me go to my thing because sometimes I get so tired. I'm like, what is it that I do again? But I do parent coaching. I do family therapy. I help families increase a level of cohesion. A lot of times there's a breakdown in communication. So I help families learn how to communicate effectively, help parents learn how to communicate with their child effectively so they can parent better. And because sometimes if you have that dynamic of aggressiveness and you have a child who already has dysregulated behavior, aggression is not going to help that child. Every child has to be treated differently. So I try to help come and give parents strategies and how to address their child's issues and how to discipline their child in a way that is productive, not counterproductive, and, try to, because if parents learn how to do what they need to do, it actually helps us to come in and do what we need to do. Because a lot of times what I find, Kendra, is that I help the child progress in a certain area, but then they still have to go back home and they have to deal with that same environment that's not conducive to what I'm teaching them. So it's like every milestone we make, sometimes that parent pull them right back in. So that's another challenge. We could talk about that another time. That's another challenge, is helping the parents to cooperate with the therapeutic interventions.
That's what I definitely wanted to tell you. I always tell my parents, you have to do your part. You have to carry it into the home, because I'm only with them 2, sometimes 3 days a week. What I do there, it helps, but you have to do your part, because like I said, had I not done my part, my son, you know, would he have improved? Yes, but it's so important that, you know, parents get on the same page. If I give you a home exercise program, it's imperative that you follow that home exercise program. It's that I give it to you for a reason. You know, you cannot coddle. You know, if I'm instituting certain behavioral, like a behavioral plan, you have to follow it. You cannot deviate. You can't give in. You know, because it's like we have to be on the same page. They have to know that when they come to therapy, it's the same thing. It's going to be the same way. Is it? For example, if the parent does time out and the child comes to me and there's a situation, I put them in time out. It has to be consistent across the board. You can't, you know, they have to know that they have to listen to me just like they have to listen to their parents. You know, because especially when I have caregivers who, you know, when a child throws a tantrum, for example, I usually offer as an incentive, and also it's very helpful sometimes because the kids are there for hours and they're hungry, is a little healthy snack at the end, provided they are behaved and provided they do everything I ask them to do. But if they don't do the snack because they didn't behave and they come out to the waiting room and their parents are coddling them, and, you know, and it's like, hello, you're not really helping, you know, you have to, it's important to be on the same page. You know. So, and I always, that's what I cannot stress that enough. It's frustrating sometimes when they're not on the same page, because it's like, you know, I feel they're working against me. You know?
So there are a lot of challenges. So those are some of the challenges that I deal with as well. And so I started to Get Your Life Back Inspiration Life Coaching, because I'm taking a lot of my skills I do in counseling for years and in pastoral counseling, and I also come into people's home and do the life coaching as well. So that's very helpful as well, and virtual. Like I started an academy, but we'll talk about that later. I'm not here to talk about me. It was just focusing on the parents and how parents can take care of themselves so they can parent better, so they can be emotionally well-adjusted, so they can try to live stress-free as much as possible, incorporating things throughout your day and out your week to help you feel better. Don't forget to socialize with people your age, because so many times all of our attention go to the children, and you forget what it is to actually interact with adults because you're with children all the time. So there's so many things you can do. And if you want to contact me and I can do like a one-on-one session when it comes to like strategies to help a parent, you can email me at getyourlifeback7@gmail.com, getyourlifeback7@gmail.com, or you can go to my website and you can sign up there, because I actually have a one-page e-guide that I created, Kendra, for parents, emotional, to maintain emotional health. And I have 5 easy ways to help parents manage emotion and stress. And it's all free. It's just a one-page e-guide. And I just have 5 strategies that you can use at home to keep yourself emotionally, like I said, and decrease your level of stress and anxiety, so you can do the things you need to do for yourself and with your children. So if you go to my website, getylifeback.com, and sign up through the email list, I will send it to you via email, and just use that as a guide. And there's so many other strategies, but I just put 5 quick, and it's simple things that a lot of us take for granted, or we don't even realize that it actually helps you to feel more calm and more connected, and help your nervous system to stay regulated, you know, and all that you have to do. So
exactly. And also, I just included my email into the chat box, which is parentingbeyondautism@gmail.com. If you have any IEP questions, if you have IEP-related questions, please don't forget to indicate your city and your state, because sometimes things can vary based on where you are. Also, I do have a mailing list on my website, as well as a blog. On my blog, I actually have an article that I have on there, which talks about, you know, traveling to Disney World with a child with, you know, special needs, because traveling, you know, to like theme parks is that's a challenge in itself. So there isn't a blog about that. There's also a blog about traveling just in general on the road with children, and offering different, you know, different ideas and tips and things that you can do while traveling on the road. And just, you know, if you want, you can go ahead and just sign up for my mailing list just to kind of be updated on things that are going on. Also, you can also see the services that I provide. I do one-on-one coaching with parents if they have, if it's IEP related or if it's OT related, whether they have questions. I do it through Skype, through FaceTime, and also through private scopes. So if that's something you're interested in, you can also send me an email, or you can contact me through my website, parentingbeyondautism.com, and you can just, we can set something up. I definitely had a great time.
Awesome. I have to try that FaceTime. I used to Skype and I used to Periscope, but I got to try to FaceTime.
Sometimes if they don't have, if they have an Android, they can do Skype, or we can do the Periscope. Right. If the iPhones, we can do FaceTime if they're comfortable. Whichever one. There's just 3 different ways. Awesome. Like I said, I do have a quick parents guide to navigating the IEP process, where I basically break down just, what to expect during the IEP process, what your role is, what your team is, how to prepare for your IEP. Right. If things don't go your way, what are your options? It's a quick guide, but if you have questions that deal with, that goes beyond what I have in the quick guide, they can always email me. We can, Periscope, FaceTime, Skype. We can do a 30-minute, or we can do an hour session. Just,
Okay.
Okay.
So it was great. You finally did your first blab.
And I didn't cry.
No, I didn't cry.
I did a scope 2 weeks ago for the very first time. Number 1, I didn't know how to turn the camera to face me. And number 2, I cried the entire scope. I cried because when I began to tell the story, I began to get very emotional, because
I see shit. The share the last 30 seconds. Oh, what we just did, I think. But